Hey, it's Elgin here, EXP Realty, the Elgin and Pulaski Walker team, and I want to talk to my sellers here a little bit. So, as you know, we've had some changes. This is the way real estate agents are compensated, how some things are done differently, and I wanted to talk to you as a seller about what's going on. These are some basic changes, and we probably should discuss them. So, number one, previously until August the 17th, nationally now, number one is that on the way agents were compensated previously, and I think in California we did a pretty good job of this, and maybe it was different in some other states, but you pay a certain fee or whatever is agreed upon between you as the seller and the agent that is representing you. From that fee, and let's just use 6%, 5%, whatever it is, 10%, doesn't matter. A portion of that was the listing agent would share with the buyer's agent, the selling agent. And in the multiple listing service, the fee that was being shared was published. So a buyer's agent would know prior to showing homes what their compensation would be if they were able to have a buyer that liked your home and wanted to place an offer in and move. So it was shareable. In most cases, it was split 50-50. In a lot of cases, the listing agent might take a 0.5% more than a buyer's agent. All of that was disclosed at that particular point. So now we have a settlement. The settlement is between the National Association of Realtors and the Department of Justice. So that being said, we've got some new forms. These are not laws yet, but they are policies that have to be followed. Number one is no longer in the MLS can we put in any compensation for the buyer's agent to help the buyer find a home. As a listing agent and you as a seller, although it was always negotiable, you are no longer required to pay the buyer's agent. So let's talk about that really quickly. In the contracts now, it will state whatever the fee is the fee that you will be paying your listing agent. So maybe that'll be 3%, 3.5%, 4%, 2%, whatever it is that's agreed upon between the seller and the listing agent. That is the fee that you will be required to pay at that particular point. What will happen is this, is that prior to any buyers looking at homes, they need to sign a contract with an agent that will show a certain compensation that the buyer is technically responsible for. Here's what is happening. Here's the practicality. Here's the what's real about all of that is that the buyer's agent can ask for what we call seller concessions, and the seller concession can be to pay the buyer's agent. Now, as a seller, you may say, well, I don't have to do that, and I'm not going to do that. All that's negotiable. But I want you to think back, sellers, particularly if you're buying your first place. If you've got your down payment, you've got your closing costs, do you actually have X amount of percentage more to pay your real estate agent? Stay competitive. Stay open-minded. When each offer comes in, whether or not seller's concessions are asked for or not, we will do net sheets so you can see what your bottom line would be so that we can make decisions. It may be a situation where, you know, the buyer is looking to say they want 3%. And maybe you as a seller will say, well, I can't pay 3, don't want to pay, whatever it is, and you say you'll pay 2%. And if the buyers are agreeable to that, then the buyers will make up the difference for the other 1%. Whatever the case may be, we now have some negotiation to do. Maybe that the fee is put on top of the price and comes back as a seller concession, assuming that the home can still appraise. The bottom line to this thing is that it's going to be negotiable, and you want to stay favorable and part of the negotiation, because here's the flip side. Here's what I'm already seeing. You're going to have some buyers that are going to come in with their own representation, obviously, and they are going to say, well, we'll pay our own commission. But now they want to negotiate on the price. So we'll pay our agent his own, but the seller doesn't have to pay a commission to them, so we're negotiating on other items. and that other item is usually the price of the home. But again, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. These are why an agent that's representing you should be doing net sheets for you, showing you the differences as you make your decisions, because this is the way real estate is going to be done now. And to be honest with you, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that it is different. It may be a little bit different. It'll take a little bit of getting used to, but I do believe it will raise professionalism in our game, and you'll be more comfortable knowing and understanding what's going on the buyer side. Now, one of the things also is that you're probably going to see some buyers come to the listing agent and say, well, we'd rather just look at it through the listing agent. Understand this, that the listing agent still has to have a buyer broker agreement signed to show them that home, and or already have in place in their listing agreement with you whatever the whatever you and that listing agent will allow to happen before they see the home. So those are different things to talk about when we negotiate. And lastly, there is the opportunity for the buyer to come in with what we call an unrepresented buyer. I don't think any buyer should do that, but they can. And if they come in as an unrepresented buyer, I, as the listing agent, am only representing the seller, so I cannot help them with that side of the deal. I can give them the paperwork, all this other kind of stuff, but I can talk to you ahead of time. And if an unrepresented buyer comes in and you say, Elgin, you can go ahead and take care of them, but it's going to be an extra percent, an extra 0.5%, or an extra 2%, whatever it is that you and I negotiate on at that particular point, then that is something that can move forward, or that they can pay for. Either way, but if they want to be unrepresented and they do not want the service of an agent, the only thing that I can do at that particular point, if you're agreeable to it, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be, I'm just saying that there's an additional cost for me to do the paperwork, but that I cannot represent them if they're unrepresented, and that's just the way the new policy is. So, just giving you some heads up on some stuff, and this is the direction we're going, but it's going to be all right. All right? You have a blessed day. I look forward to speaking to you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave your questions here or wherever. And this is the way it is. This is the way it is across the country. Take care and God bless.